Hello everyone, welcome to Colors of Birth, where we explore life stories together. My name is Yamuna and I am your host in this journey. Today we have a very special person with me. Let's welcome him in this journey.
Yeah, hi, I'm Darren Reynolds. I'm from Every Daughter Matters, and it's a wonderful opportunity to come and spend some time with Colours of Perth and Yamuna this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us and letting us know about the stories that Every Daughter Matters.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's start with a real introduction.
Sure.
What is Every Daughter Matters?
Sure. So I guess Every Daughter Matters is not exactly a household name in Australia. And I have previously worked for bigger organisations. I think everyone would have heard of World Vision. Most people heard of the Salvation Army. So
Yes,
I have worked in big charities or big NGOs. But my heart has always been actually around the issue of human trafficking. And that really started a number of years ago, about going on 20 years ago. So firstly, what do? We are an Australian-based organisation that works in Nepal, along the southern border with India, which actually is one of the biggest human trafficking routes on the planet. Up to 20 to 25,000 women and children are trafficked from Nepal into India each year. And majority of those are girls. So we want to intervene at a key moment on that journey so that we can stop them before they cross that border and basically disappear. So we have currently 13 what we call surveillance booths along the border. It's strategically placed along the border, and they're manned by Nepali staff that we employ, predominantly women, and they will look into the traffic that's crossing that border and look for anything suspicious. Sometimes they just do routine checks, but often they'll see something suspicious and they will stop a tuk-tuk or an auto or a bus or a truck or people on feet, anything, and stop them and start asking questions. And what we're discovering is that it's on average, we're actually intercepting 140 a month that are actually being trafficked.
140 girls.
Yes, young women, children that are being trafficked, and then we're able to get them into a safe place, and then look at what comes next for them, so we can unpack a bit of that as we go, get them, reunite them with families, or help them reintegrate back into society in a safe way.
As me being one of the Nepalese girls,
Sure.
Thank you so much for helping
Our pleasure.
my girls.
Yep.
And thank you so much for giving them a secure space.
Yeah.
I have known most of these things. And might be it's very new for the people over here.
Yeah, yep.
How did you come to know about all those things?
Yeah, so I was like most Australians.
Because when even at my workplace, when people know about this, they said, is that Nepalese people are getting most of the girls trafficking happening in Nepal and India border. We never knew about that.
Yeah, okay.
So most of people really don't know.
Yes, yeah, yep.
I'm amazed, how did you come to know about it?
Yeah, so I went on a trip to Cambodia. And I was with the church group, and we were doing humanitarian work in a village outside Phnom Penh. So I got to see poverty firsthand in a way that I'd never experienced before.
People say here I don't have food to eat.
I'm starving. Yeah. No.
What did you see?
Look, I think the thing that stays with me, and I have photographs of this, which I do use in my presentations, is of at one stage we were driving through a village on the outskirts of Phnom Penh, and the village was there because there was a rubbish tip there. I stopped the driver because I looked out the window, and I've taken a photo of it. In amongst all this rubbish, you suddenly see in the middle of that there's this little child, and that child is looking for food. And I went, that is the last place I'd be looking for food. And the person we were with said, if they can't find food, they will try and find something that they can sell at the markets to try and buy food. And I looked at that kid and I realised in that moment that this wasn't a bad day for him. This was every day for him.
Let's say twice a day.
Yeah.
Lunch, dinner.
There's no education. No. There's no thought of work or anything. This kid is trying to stay alive. And in that moment, I looked up and there was a 13-year-old girl at the top of the rubbish tip with a stick, sifting through up there. That's where the newest rubbish is. And the only time I saw any excitement in that village was when a new truck arrived with rubbish. That was the highlight of their day.
Yes.
And I thought, these people have got nothing to look forward to, there's no hope. And look, a couple of things that occurred to me in that moment. Firstly, is that I hate poverty. I hate it. Poverty's a thief. It steals your health, it steals your dignity, it steals your education, it steals your future. You know, there's so many layers. The second thing that occurred to me was, this is as bad as it gets. And I was wrong. Because when I saw that 13-year-old girl, I saw her as somebody who needs help, who needs food, who needs restoration of dignity, that needs to come out of poverty. There are a lot of people out there who see that as an opportunity. And I know beyond a doubt that there are people who go into these villages, women and men, who will look at that and say, I can use that to my advantage. And it might be a case of a particular girl, they might go up to her and say, I can get you out of here.
I can at least give you lunch.
Well, better still, I've got a friend over the border in Thailand who runs a clothing factory they always need helpers and workers. So I can lend money to your family to get them out of this village and into somewhere better. You come and work for us for a couple of years and just pay off that debt and you can come back. Yeah, look, it's complicated because sometimes the first girl they recruit, they actually deliver on that promise. So the money starts coming and everybody in that village thinks this is the real deal. They build up what we call social cred. So credibility, I guess, you know. So then they come, the recruiters come back and they give them 5 or 6 girls and say, can you do the same thing? That's when it all goes wrong, because they will end up predominantly in the sex industry and be physically exploited. And in that moment I went, what can I do to change this? And I didn't know. So look, the journey continued for me that, I might swing around to a story a bit later about why it's so personal. Okay, but right now, this was the reason I got involved in this.
Was that like you were just traveling simply, or you were really in this?
So there was already a heart to help people, and that was what took me with that group of people to that village. And we would go out and hand out bags of rice. We would hand out toys and clothes to the villagers. And I think I just realised that, this stuff goes way deeper.
Someone had to do something.
Yes, yeah. So it was the idea that people were actually buying and selling these children that actually went, I want to do something about this. So, yeah, that's why I ended up with World Vision. For a season, I was with the Salvation Army on the streets of Perth, actually, helping the homeless and people with addictions and things. And I loved it, but my heart was always going to be towards, anti-human trafficking. So then I got the opportunity to work for another organisation, another Christian organisation, an Australian organisation that was helping actually go and finding girls that were caught up in bars and clubs and actually getting them out. So that was fantastic. And I thought possibly at that stage that was my dream job and that I'd be doing that for the rest of my life. But eventually the journey shifted slightly and I ended up with Every Daughter Matters. And what drew me to that was between the rubbish tip, kind of metaphorical poverty, and the bars and clubs where girls are being exploited and abused every night, there's a journey. What I love about Every Daughter Matters is we position ourselves on that journey to interrupt that. Because as a dad, I never want my daughter to experience what those girls have experienced. So by stopping them here, the damage hasn't been done yet. There is some damage because they've been trafficked. But if we can interrupt that and get them home safely back to their families at that point, this stuff doesn't need to happen. And the better we do this, the less we need to go and get the girls out. So I think prevention is better than the cure. Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it?
I don't have words to say.
Yeah.
I have been seeing how it really happened. For the people who are living here, this might be a story. It might be just like watching movies. but I have grown up in that society where most of the girls are not secure.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the reason in my country, let's say most of the Asian country, we don't want girls.
Yeah. Yep.
We want
Yep.
boys.
Yes.
We prefer boys.
And that's why we always say young women and children. When we say that's who we interrupt, it's very rarely boys.
Yeah.
So we know that there is a cultural problem.
Yeah.
But we don't want to judge that either. We love the Nepali people, we love the Nepali culture. We just want to raise up the most vulnerable and make that a bit more equal through what we do.
So right now you are with Every Daughter Matters.
That's
Is
correct.
that only in Nepal?
Yes, it is. Yes.
How does it really work?
So yeah, we felt, so I'm speaking a little bit on behalf of Ross Nankaro, who is our CEO and the founder. So only about 4 years old, only been going for about 4 years, but he was already working in Nepal on different things and saw what was happening with human trafficking and said, we have to do something about that. So Ross and a lady called Janelle Payne are the senior people. They realised fairly quickly that when you're in somebody else's country and you're in someone else's culture, you don't have all the answers. And I think we've been guilty as Westerners, as Australians throughout history, of going to other people's cultures and trying to tell them how to do it. The important thing here was they found local people who they trusted, and basically we came across a group called Aashish Social Services, and they, or we use the acronym ASSN, so I say Aashish Social Services Nepal. They were already operating a booth on the border, and what Ross found was they were doing that with absolute integrity, and they had fantastic character, and was able to go, these people are people we can work with. They've already identified the problem. They've already identified a solution. What we need to do is resource them and manage that so that there is money coming in from Australia to empower what they're doing. We don't need Westerners based there. We don't need Australians living there and, stumbling around into the language and,
Again, when we go to rescue the girls, the police over there, they behave very different when they are Westerner.
Yeah, there's a bit more accountability.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and we want to lift up the police too. We don't want to focus on the corruption and the brokenness of the system. We want to say, these are your people, these are your kids. How do we work together to get the best possible result? So we're not putting down anyone in Nepal. We love Nepal and we want it to be the best it can be. So we then employ, so currently about 50 frontline staff and predominantly women. I think there's only about three men on the team. They are overwhelmingly women. Some of the girls we employ, or young women we employ, have been trafficked themselves. So they know how it feels.
Yeah.
So they know what it looks like in a way that I wouldn't identify if I was looking into the traffic that's crossing that border. I just wouldn't see some of the subtle, stuff that's going on, the nuance. But they see it. In fact, just quickly on this, there's a lady, we call her Hawkeyes. I don't know if you understand she's, how hawks, they fly high and they look down and they're looking, So she stands in the middle of the road and she will stare into oncoming traffic and she will look at everybody, and she is so brave and so determined. And when we found out why, is because she had spent time in India as a sex slave and had escaped. So she doesn't want that to happen to any other girls. That is so valuable. So around 11 or 12 of our staff currently have been trafficked themselves. Can you imagine the insight they've got when they're looking into that traffic? And also, when you stop a girl at that border and she thinks she's going to a good job, or she thinks that her future husband is waiting for her, and we say, no, you can't go, they don't like us. There's resentment, So when we have girls that know firsthand what that is like, they can help bring understanding and shine light into that situation in a way that, again, for a young Nepali girl, 15, 16, crossing that border and having a white, man come up and stop, that's scarier.
Yeah, of course.
So to have Nepali girls go over and say, no, you've been lied to. So the next part of that is that we will take them to a safe place, an emergency shelter.
So when you stop them, do they believe you?
Not always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they are thinking that they are going to the brighter side
Yes,
of their life,
yes,
because they have spent all the dark side of their life.
yes. Yeah,
Going
all
through
they've known is
everything.
poverty,
The only
brokenness.
thing they think, like, once I cross this border, it's a bright life.
Yes,
And
yes.
someone stops in between.
Yep.
And I don't think it's easier for them to
No.
convince like that.
Let me give you an example. There were 3 girls that we stopped at one particular border, and we won't mention names of the different borders and things here, but I will say her name. Her name was Ashika. She was 15, and
15?
yes, she was travelling with 2 other girls.
So the 3 girls all together?
Yes, and the other 2 were only 14. What had happened was she'd been living somewhere, I don't know where, but quite rural, remote, up in the foothills, I think, in north. And she was living with her 80-year-old grandfather, who was not well. She'd lost both her parents when she was 5, so she'd been with him for 10 years. She realised that she needed to do something and that he needed support as well. So she went, I'm going to have to go and find a job somewhere. So she put out on Facebook that her dream job was to work in a hotel in India. So some guy in India saw that post on Facebook and went, okay, this is good. Yeah, if you can get here, I'll give you a job and I'll give you accommodation. All I need from you is to bring as many girls your age or younger as possible. And she went, wow, what an opportunity. She said to her friends, look at this opportunity. And they all got really excited. Now, when I tell that story, when I go into schools in Perth and share, you know, whether it's Santa Maria College or Mercedes or mixed schools, but particularly the girls, as soon as I tell that story, they know straight away, no, that's dangerous. And you go, but these girls are not educated. Some of them are barely reading and writing, right? Let alone learning about human trafficking, which is a whole other... No, completely naive. So this is the first time they're becoming aware of all this thing. So we've, I actually have a photo of them standing at the border with a police officer and one of our staff. The police officer's got this really gun. I'm like, okay. They've stopped them. It was a couple of our female staff stopped them. I've got some raw footage of them in the back of a car being taken to an emergency shelter where they're going to be safe. They can stay there for 5 or 6 nights. And when I play that video in my presentations, everyone's a little bit surprised by just how sad those girls look. They look like they're going to cry. They're shattered. And in that moment you go, yeah, that's different than with the previous agency I worked at, where we actually went and rescued girls out of bars and clubs and brothels. Once they knew they were safe, their faces would light up and they'd get really excited.
Yes.
These girls are going, you've just crushed my dreams.
Of course.
So, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know who you are, and I thought I was getting a job, and I think a lot of times they still think you stopped me getting this job. What I saw later was in one of our safe homes. So safe homes as opposed to emergency shelters. So emergency shelter is like a very temporary accommodation where they can stay for very short term, for maybe 5 or 6 days, while we contact family. Family might come to collect them. For those girls who can't go back to their families straight away, we do have 2 safe homes and a halfway house. So we can accommodate, I think it's around 50 odd girls at the moment.
They are in
20 in each
house?
safe house, and I think about 10 in the halfway house. But they can stay there for around 6 months. Until we can really invest in them with education, practical training like sewing machines. So we have rooms full of sewing machines. We are looking at so we were running a cafe. We've just stopped that because it wasn't sustainable in its current form. What we're looking at next is, and this is in process as we speak, we've got food carts that we're going to be setting up and do street food. So we're going to train them up in hospitality and cooking and barista training, all that sort of stuff. So we want to upskill them before they go back to their communities. While I was in one of the safe homes, one of the girls pulled out this big piece of cloth and started cutting it up and jumped on one of the machines. In 9 minutes and 12 seconds, because I was filming, she handed me a scarf she made from a big piece of material. I now carry that around with me when I do presentations. I probably should have brought it today. And at that point, I show the video of her on the machine making it, and then I pull it out and I show, this is what we've taught this girl to do while she's in our care. She can take that skill back to her village and potentially earn income from that. So that's the story. But I think the point I was going to get to there is that I've got a photo of about 14, 15 of these girls with some of the crew from Australia in this safe home, and their faces are beaming. It is beautiful. I've had to blur out their eyes for
Yes,
dignity and safekeeping. But you can see their smiles, and they now know they're safe. They know they're loved. They know they've got a future. This is good, and it just was one of the highlights of the trip for me. Was you can go and see all the booths and the surveillance booths, and they're great because that's the work in action. But when you see those girls a little bit further down the track, and you go, they get it, and they're safe. Like it's.
It's amazing listening to these stories.
Thank you. It's an absolute privilege to be part of it. And if you had told me, when I was in school that I'd be doing this kind of work, I would have, what? Because I was a radio producer, and that's what I wanted to do. But when this came along, I couldn't ignore it. I had to do something about it. And I love the people I work with, both here in Australia and on the ground in Nepal.
Have you been to Nepal?
Yeah, only the once at this point. So when I first started with Every Daughter Matters, I certainly had more experience with Cambodia and Thailand. So I needed to have some first-hand experience in Nepal now that we're working exclusively there. But the thing for us is we want to, because this is funded by the Australian public, we don't want to waste money. So it doesn't make sense in my role for me to keep going. There are key people in the organisation who do go up twice a year because that's necessary. Yeah. For me, my job is to promote, raise awareness and support for the work we do. The challenge, I guess, for me is I don't have all the answers yet because I've only been the once, and I'm still coming to terms with Nepali culture. I am learning the language. I have started learning the alphabet, so I'm doing it properly. But yeah, I think I certainly have stories from that trip, but enough at this point to be able to go and present in public about what we do with some authenticity and with authenticity and conviction. At some point, it is going to make sense for me to go back, get more stories, get more footage, more video, and to start filling in the gaps, the things I don't quite know yet. So, for instance, I said we had a room full of sewing machines. Yeah. They're pedal powered. Yes, so they don't need to be plugged in. Yeah. So they can be used anywhere, right? Yes. So my question is, are we able to equip some of these girls and gift them a sewing machine, or that they can purchase one off us, for however it would work, to take back to their villages? I don't know. That is something I need to find out, because that makes sense to me. Yeah. That if we're not doing it, maybe we should be.
We should be doing something.
Yeah, but I would suggest there again, because it's not Westerners making these decisions, it would be local Nepalis deciding whether it's going to be effective for them to take a sewing machine or not. So I trust that those decisions are being made well. I just don't know personally what the answers are yet. So I'd like to, because when somebody asks me in a presentation, do they get to keep sewing machines? I say, I don't know. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to make it up. So it would be good to actually find out some of those sort of questions. And I'm certainly, the more I present in public, the more I'm getting questions that I go, okay, I need to find out the answer to that. Now I can ask the team members, but sometimes you have to see it yourself to fully unpack that for people. And if that decision was made not to send them, why not? Because there will be a reason. Yeah. It's not because we don't want to. It'd be because that didn't make sense to, or we don't have the funding. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing. Yep.
So when you first went there and see everything in real, how did you feel?
I was a little bit surprised. I think my perception of Nepal was skewed a bit because you see, footage of Kathmandu and Mount Everest and the touristy sort of things.
The beautiful side of Nepal.
Yeah, that's right, and that's hyped up in the media. What you realise fairly quickly is that a majority of the Nepali population doesn't live like that, no. as you would be obviously aware. And even just going through some of the domestic airports, when we got to Kathmandu, and then our work is along the southern and western border. So we flew west, and then we drove, and for instance, driving from one city to another, if that was Perth to Bunbury, that would maybe take you 2 hours, right? Yeah. Here. The same distance there probably took us 5.
More than. If
Yes.
you are lucky, that's fine.
Yeah, that's right. And it was a real experience. And even seeing road crews who live in tents on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere because they're working on the revamping the highway. That's not how we do things here. So this is all culturally different, and just seeing how simply a lot of people live, and it helps you understand. There's a difference between living simply and living with extreme poverty that's actually life-threatening, and where you start to see the desperation. So what we see is when we intercept those girls at the border. You've heard the saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yes.
Well, you also can't judge a story by the chapter you've walked in on. These girls have got a backstory.
Yes.
Something has happened back here to bring them to this point on this journey, to put themselves at risk and to think they're going to something better. That story has been written. There's not a lot we can do about that. But the next chapter is critical, because if we don't intervene, we know what waits for them. The horrors of what they're going to is the chapter we can rewrite.
Mm-hmm.
If we hadn't intervened, that's almost a pre-written script.
Yeah.
What we are saying is, no, let's write a new story. We understand that we're putting them back into poverty, but how can we value add to them while they're in our care? We can't do everything. We do this really well, and I think we're being incredibly effective. And just to give you, last year, we rescued 1,701 young women and children at the borders in Nepal, and got them, and 90% of those are now back with family. That's really powerful. That's only in our 4th year, so that's growing, and our overall we've rescued 3,300, so over half of them came in last year alone. We are making incredible progress here.
Do you think those issues are growing, or people are getting aware?
My understanding is from experience there and previous experience in other countries, is that we are starting to turn the tide on this. Look, even if we're not, it's worth it for every single girl we rescued, no question. But you've got to believe that, and okay, here's a great one, really plays into what you're saying here, is we, last year in September, our team was up there. I wasn't part of it, but we captured footage of Hawkeyes, as mentioned before. She was standing there and she saw a young man and a young woman standing by the side of the road at a kiosk. The border's right there. They're just up the road a little bit, approaching the border. And she immediately went over to them, started talking to them. Next thing you know, you can see her bringing them back to the surveillance booth. So these tin booths, these blue booths that we've set up, they're clearly marked as what we do. She's brought them in, and all of a sudden, the stories are starting to make sense. He was a Nepali guy living in India who had met this girl online when she was 16, so 2 years previous. She's now 18. He had started grooming her.
For 2 years?
For 2 years. Building up trust to say to the point where I'm coming to collect you. And I think the intention was, we're going to get married. They've fallen in love. So he's come all the way into Nepal to go and collect her from wherever. Her parents don't know where she is. He's bringing her back to the border, and they're that close. He has arranged for a human trafficker. Now, he is a trafficker as well, but he's arranged for another one at the border to receive her. So he doesn't even have to take her into India. Once it's handover, bang, she goes. He works on the next operation. Because Hawkeyes saw, I wish I knew her name, brought them back and realised something was up. They got the police involved, so local law enforcement. They then set up a sting operation where they went to the border with them, both of them, and the guy came to meet them. They grabbed both the guys. They were then taken away with the police. The girl was brought back to us, and we contacted her family. She was then reunited with her family. Those 2 men were facing charges for what they're doing. But the bigger thing for us is that it took him 2 years.
To groom everything.
Yeah. And then the cost of coming to collect her for no result. So when it got to the border and she was taken away, he didn't earn any money from that operation. It was a waste of time and money. The more we do that, the more people will say, oh, it's not worth it. Think of the girls in the bars too, when and it's not us that does this, but another agency that goes in and actually rescues those girls. Somebody has gone to some remote village to find her. to bring her in, lend money, all that sort of stuff. There's a major operation. She's now been trained up and working those bars. She's getting abused every night, but then somebody comes in and takes her out of there. They've lost that income and that sense of, that. So we've hit them where it hurts in their business model. You do that enough, and when you get the police involved, when you find, as I did in one operation, there were 5 or 6 girls underage in that bar. So we got the police involved. The police raided it. So this was in Thailand. And they actually rescued all those girls and then brought charges, shut the bar down, right? So everybody loses money on this. So next time the bar owner gets out and he opens a new bar, he's going, we're not going to employ children anymore.
No.
It's not worth it.
True.
So I think the feeling that I get when I'm in those sort of countries and I'm talking is that they feel that the time is coming when it's not an issue, that they're not going to find children anymore. We're going to probably get to the point where we'll close down booths because they're just not bringing people through there. The risk is too big to bring someone through that particular crossing point. So we shut it down, we go somewhere else. And if you do that enough, or you leave it there and you open a new booth somewhere else so that they can't just go back there, you close the net. And eventually they go, those numbers will start dropping. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That's a dream, actually.
Yeah, it is a dream, but it's not unrealistic.
There should be something that
Yep.
will make our dream come true.
Yes, yep.
So usually when you rescue the girls, what's the parents' reaction?
Yeah, look, I can't speak with a lot of authority on that again because I've not been at that point where there's the reunification happening. I can only really base it on the numbers that we publish, and there's a delay when we publish numbers. So when I'm presenting, I'm still reporting on numbers from December, because it takes a while to verify and to make sure everything correlates before we release it to the public. So we know that 181 individuals were intercepted in December. And I think of those, 179 were returned to families. My understanding is that when they contact the parents, they're relieved and excited that you've found the girls. Most of them don't know where they are. Now, the trick is, and you would be able to speak a lot more authority on this than I would, but we're in a case of an arranged marriage.
Oh, that's a big again.
It is a challenge because obviously that was arranged by the parents. And when a girl is in an abusive relationship and is going to actually to escape it, she can't just go and knock on the parents' door, can she?
No. We are said, when we get married, we say that this is not your home anymore.
Yes.
That's how.
Yep. So that's the
arranged
cultural
marriage.
reality. Yeah. So my understanding is that the Nepali staff are able to advocate on their behalf and will contact the family on their behalf and explain exactly what's happened, and that say that she needs to be back with family now. And so the families will take the girls back when they know and understand the full situation.
So you mean to say you are getting more help from all the communities and the
Yes.
Nepalese people as well?
Yes.
It's really nice.
Yes.
So what's the future plan for Every Daughter Matters?
We have to sustain what we're doing. So currently 13 booths, 2 safe homes and a halfway house. We need to make sure that they're sustained financially from support in Australia. But I guess if we increase the amount of money coming in to easily cover what we're already doing, then we just look at we do the maths on it, we do the accounts on it, and we say it's time to open a new surveillance booth. We would, the border, I don't know if people are aware, but I think literally from the top eastern corner to the top western corner is about 1,800 kilometres long of border. And most of that is easily traversable, isn't
It's
it?
an open
it's
border.
on the plains, right?
There's nothing over there.
Yeah. So there is a lot more that we need to be doing. And I said, we're not the only ones doing it, but we can only be responsible for what we do. So if we see there is a gap, we need to fill that gap. So our plan is to keep growing the operation, to keep expanding what we're doing, but do it in a way that's sustainable and responsible.
Doing those kind of things isn't the easy job.
No.
So what are the complications that you get?
I think probably the most obvious thing would be we only have limited powers at the border, so we can stop and detain girls for a short period of time. But if they lie to us and say, no, it's all good, we're not being trafficked, or they don't know, and they convince it, we actually can't hold them against their will. if they still go, if they don't believe that what we're saying is true, then they will still go. Our only fallback at that point would be Nepali police or Indian police on the other side, or customs or whatever, to actually then do share some of the load there and actually say, no, we need to look into this. We only have certain, as I said, powers, but also resources to effectively roll. I think we're punching above our weight, but they're still going to get through. So how do we make that net, foolproof, so that no one gets through?
That's what I was thinking. Like, they are so much convinced that they have a better life across the border.
Yeah.
But when you approach them, they won't agree with you at once.
No.
Might be you have to convince them.
So it's on our staff to do the best job they can in the time that they've got there. Yeah. I think the other big one would be for those that, for that period of time that they're in our care, how do we best prepare them for going back? Now, the biggest question I get, I thought, or one of the most common questions I get is, aren't you just putting them back into poverty and won't they just try again?
Yeah.
The answer is no. Well, yes, we are putting them back into poverty. We understand that. But they we won't see them back at a border again, because once they know that it's a lie and a myth, they understand that what they've got is better than. And I think we need to talk about the realities of what they're going to, if you're okay for us to do that.
Yeah, sure.
But let me finish that thought, I think, first. So particularly for those that come through our safe homes, where we've got them for 6 months or thereabouts, what can we do to... and in fact, when I was up on the trip last time, we were in the safe home and one girl got quite emotional. Now, she didn't speak English, so she came through a translator. She came up to Janelle and myself and just sobbing said, all I need is enough money to finish year 11 and 12.
Oh, yes.
Education is so important, as you know, for these girls. And we immediately kind of reached for our wallets and went, well, we know we can pay for this, but we then kind of, well, hang on, if we do that for her, what about the other 19 girls?
Yes.
So we went, right, we know how important education is. Not every girl in this room is going to need to finish high school or needs to go to university. But for those that's the best option, we need to be able to provide that. So we actually came back to Australia and Janelle approached our board and said, we need a program that guarantees that any girl that comes through our safe homes and needs it has access to finishing year 9, 10, 11, 12, and for some go on to tertiary. So we created a program called Pathways to Potential, which we launched 6 months ago.
Pathways to Potential.
It's an Australian funded program to roll out in Nepal.
Okay.
And community involvement too. So we will run events like public activist style things where we're against human trafficking along with law enforcement. So these girls will go and actually help raise awareness about human trafficking, again, having been victims of it.
Is there any stories that you want to relate, or you want to tell to everyone that touched your life?
Yeah, I think whenever it comes from somewhere deeply personal, it obviously helps define your journey, but it also helps people understand why you do what you do. Yeah. Look, for me, it was I described back in 2005. I went on this missions trip to Cambodia, and I mentioned that I saw poverty for the first time in its real. So I've seen poverty on the streets of Perth.
Before you saw that poverty, what was your definition for poverty?
I mean, you see, I remember growing up with, Feed the World, the Live Aid and things like that, and you saw pictures of starving children, and you kind of almost felt like, oh, that's just Africa.
Oh, yes.
And it's probably not like that anymore. It feels so far removed. The difference here was it felt so real, but it wasn't glamorized in that you didn't walk around seeing starving babies and things, but it was so entrenched that poverty was just so, these people just had very, very little. And there was a moment when I connected with a family in this village, and they had, I think, 3 girls at that stage, 4 girls. And the youngest, she was the second youngest I connected with the most. She would have been 6, I think, at the time. And we were there day after day, but we were staying in Phnom Penh and coming out to this village every day. And on one of the days we turned up, she wasn't around.
Oh.
And she'd been like, playing, or, she'd been so present. And I started asking, where's Pek? And no one was answering my question. And I kept going, where's Pek? Pek, no, and they're like, and then pretending I don't speak enough English to, they were just avoiding the question. And I was like, okay, something's up. And eventually I got hold of my translator and I said, where's Pek? And he said, she got sick during the night. And I said, what?
Why?
And he said, she's not well enough to come, but there was a sense that she could die. In fact, my first thing was she had died, but she hadn't. And then next day she was back and she was playing, and it occurred to me that she looked happy. And that was the thing. I was like, oh, despite the poverty, these people look really happy. And they would often come along to our events with really lovely clothes and everything. And I said, but I've seen where you live. I don't know how you clean your clothes, but they had dignity and self-respect. But that's where it hit home, when this girl could have died during the night from something simple. It might have been a stomach bug or something.
Yes.
That's why she was able to recover fairly quickly. But it might have been enough to kill her, and they actually thought she might die.
Died, yeah.
That's how on the edge they were, and I think that was the reality check for me, going, man, we just go to the hospital, or we get a doctor and we pull through it. It's very rare that we would die of something so simple. I was struck again, like the comparative to poverty here in Perth is we have homeless people sleeping rough who have access to clean drinking water. They have access to health services and the Salvation Army and mission.
Everything.
This, not to denigrate what they're experiencing, it's still real. They're still very broken, but it's not life-threatening like it is in other countries. So I was unsettled by what I'd seen. And I knew I had to understand more about why this was happening. So I went back again a year later in 2006. And it was on that trip that I got to go out to a rescue centre that was run by an Australian agency who I ended up working for 15 years later. Mm. And they had rescued about 13 girls from the sex trade, or from sexual abuse. And as I walked into this facility, or as we drove up to this facility, I had messaged because it was an Australian couple running it, and I had messaged this guy saying, we're here, are we at the right place? Because I was a bit thrown. I was expecting a lovely house with these girls living. It was a compound. So there were brick walls, there was a padlock gate, there were broken bottles embedded into the top of the wall for, like a barbed wire style thing. And I was like, wow, this is a bit intimidating. I said, are we at the right place? He said, I'll come and let you in. So he actually unpadlocked the door, the gate. We drove the vehicle in. He shut the gates behind us and padlocked them again. And it was a 2-story house. And as we were, he had all the welcomes and that, met some of the girls. Then as he was doing a tour of the place, he took us out the back and he said, this is where we prepare the food out here. It was like an outdoor kitchen. He said, this is where we prepare the food. He said, yesterday was really interesting because we had a lot of wind and rain, and we had one of our girls on the roof threatening to throw herself off the roof.
Oh.
And I went, oh, wow. And he went, yeah, thank God we're able to talk her down safely, but that's the trauma these girls are still recovering from. There were so many stories that he would tell, but I was like, oh, wow, this is getting real. As he took us inside, he started showing us around the accommodation where the girls were staying. And as we're talking, this one little girl put a face around the corner of the room and smiled at me. And and he said, he explained what had happened physically to that little girl. And he told me a name, and the thing that hit me so hard was he said, she's only 8 years of age. Oh, God. My daughter Cassie was 8. It was like somebody stabbed me in the chest. I couldn't breathe. And I went, what the hell do I do with that? I'm a radio producer. What am I doing? And look, I sobbed all the way back to Phnom Penh after on the trip back, and just went, what do I do with that? How do I stop that? there was a moment, I think, where it all just came together. I woke up one night just crying because I had this image of this little girl burned into my brain. And my wife at the time rolled over and said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I don't know, but I have to do something about this." And that's what caused me to leave a career of 18 years of radio, audio production to go into the sort of work I'm in now. And I carry that little girl's image in my head wherever I go. And there, I remember early in the piece when I joined World Vision and I was out promoting their fundraising, which is called 40-Hour Famine. A lot of you will still remember that. And I was about to go into a school and speak to a bunch of, I think, year 11s or 12s in a chapel service at a Catholic school. And I sat in the car and I remember shaking. I was so nervous and going, "I can't do this." I was having a bit of a, almost hyperventilating, going, I just hadn't done a lot of public speaking. And I was like, I'm so nervous. And I went, I can't do it. And then I went, you know what? I have to do this. I pictured her and I said, I'm doing this for you. And it just gave me the strength I needed to get up. And with the 40-Hour Famine, the fundraiser we were running, on the strength of that passion and that drive and developing a team around me that would go out into schools, in 2011 we raised $570,000 from Western Australian schools doing this fundraiser.
Thank you.
That's over $500,000.
I don't have any other word to say other than thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it felt so amazing that I was able to do that for girls like, and her name was Lacanar. I carried Lacanar in my heart. For a while she was in my head, but she dropped into my heart. And I just think, again, I never want what happened to Lacanar to happen to my daughter Cassie.
No one will.
But every daughter matters. Isn't that so powerful?
It is.
And I can say when I go into even boys' schools and, you can hear them walk in and go, "Oh, daughter," they're like, I go, let's address the elephant in the room here. Every son matters too. Yeah. But people aren't buying and selling their sons like they are their daughters. This is why you and I need to be real men. And look, a powerful moment happened when I was at a boys' school here in Perth. It was one of the religious schools. And I got up in a chapel service and there were 150 year 12 boys. Such a powerful moment because I was able to show them a video of what happens to the girls if they go across that border. So it was filmed in an Indian brothel with Nepali girls. And it was undercover footage. So it wasn't graphic, but it was enough to go, okay, we know what's happening here. And the take-home message of that video was actually that it cost less for them to abuse a girl in one of the rooms than it was to buy the drink that they were having while they were waiting. And I got up after that video and you could have heard a pin drop in that auditorium and those boys were sitting there going, "What did we just watch?" And I said, guys, you're part of the problem. Yeah. Or you're part of the solution. Your choice. Your choice. Because so much of what happens in Southeast Asia in particular is Australian men doing the wrong thing. I'm challenging those boys to be real men and to not just be not part of the problem anymore, but to be part of the solution. When you look at Ross Nankaro, who runs Every Daughter Matters, who was a troubled youth, who is now running this incredible organisation that's rescued over 3,000. The guy who runs the other agency I worked for was an electrician from Cairns, who's now rescued over 25,000 girls from bars and clubs. I would love to see the day come when Australian men are not feared when they're overseas, but they're celebrated. Yeah. Again, pipe dream, maybe blue sky dreaming, but wouldn't it be? It's nice to let's aim for that. I think that's really
the dream won't be fulfilled until you dream about that.
That's right, and until you have the communication where you go out and you actually make that okay to do. And the principal of that school came up to me after my presentation and he said, "That video was incredible. That was so powerful." And he said, "But actually what landed it for those boys was the way you framed it. Well done." So I knew I was on message and when I looked those boys in the eye, and I encourage people when I present in particularly elderly groups like Provis and U3A groups, when I go in and I say, when I looked at those boys in the eye, that whole room, and I said, "Are you going to be real men?" Yeah. They all nodded. Yeah. Now, how many go on and actually do that? I don't know, but at least in that moment they were on board.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance that the more they know before they go, the more less likely they are to be offenders and to be the perpetrators of the sort of stuff we're talking about. So I guess there's the first-hand stuff, the stuff of what we actually practically do on the border, but it's also the education here about who we are and what we do, and that matters. That really matters. So goosebumps. So for me, what still drives me is that little 8-year-old girl in Cambodia. Now I'm not working in Cambodia anymore. I'm working in Nepal.
But it's the same scenario. There's a different country. Everything is same. Everything.
I found so many similarities as to the drivers of why this happens. So I think every one of those little girls is Lakana for me, and I've got to do whatever I can in my power to stop that happening.
I'm really happy to be part of whatever you were doing.
Thank you.
I'm really happy that I'm proud that someone is doing something for my country.
Great.
Because usually people don't think about others. They're just more concerned about their life, where they're going to spend the holiday, what's their retirement plans, and all those things. But someone like you, who spend their whole life thinking about others, it's privileged to meet you.
We need more of you.
You need more of you. Of course, we need more of you.
There's so many good people out there. And I think that's the other side of what I do is I keep meeting really amazing people. And look, at the end of the day, it's nothing special about me. There's nothing special about Ross or the other people I've mentioned. I guess the only real difference is we're actually decided to do something about it. That doesn't make us special.
That makes you really special. People don't decide. People just think that, okay, I have $1 million for a retirement. I'm going to buy 2 million house. That's what their plans are. But your plans are, I'm going to rescue all those girls.
I guess it's within reach of all of us, though. It's a decision to make. And I encourage more people to make that decision. Yeah.
So, after all those stories, I hope everyone wants to join your team.
So do I.
And I personally want to join your team.
We definitely need to look at ways that we can get you along to some of the presentations and share from your perspective as a Nepali young lady. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really powerful.
So how does this really work?
So, I think the key for what we're doing here is our support for what we do is not coming from, if you look at who our clients are, the girls we rescue, they can't pay for what we do. So we need other people to step in on their behalf. So that's why we approach the Australian public and say, here's a practical way that you can support what we're doing. First way to do that is to give me an opportunity to go and tell my stories. Now, I can speak in schools. That's a big thing for me. I've worked in schools for a long time. And as we said just a moment ago, we're challenging young people about how they live their lives and what they can do moving forward. The education is powerful. So if anyone that's watching this today is connected to a school, now it is upper school, it is high school, it is probably year 9 or 10.
10, 11,
Really powerful with the year 11s and 12s. And it does line up with curriculum, in government schools with the HASS curriculum, or Humanities and Social Sciences. And in religious schools, whether it's Catholic or Independent Christian or Anglican, Baptist, those sort of schools, it lines up with religious education. So we can speak from that place as well. And some schools have come on board to do fundraisers for us.
Oh, okay.
So one school, Kingsway Christian College up north, did a lapathon last year where they raised over $4,000 from a bunch of students just doing laps around the oval. And every time they raised $180, they put up that they'd just rescued one more girl.
Oh.
Because that's what it costs us to achieve.
So for one girl to rescue you,
it's $187.
$187.
So we kind of dumb it down a bit and say for every 180. So so we call that Project 180. So we're turning lives around for $180. Mercedes College in Perth here, they did a bake sale, and again, same thing. Every time they raised $180 odd, they'd put a cutout of Priya, our mascot, and put it up saying we just rescued another girl. So that's really good. So there's a practical, they're learning, but they're also activating something. Churches are great for us, going in and speaking on a Sunday morning in a church service, or to a seniors group, or to a ladies group, or a men's group. That's when we get to tell the stories. And then people can respond themselves. And one key response that we get and we so value is what we call interception partners. Somebody who says, I'm prepared to direct debit or, credit card every month, a set amount, but it's not, we don't tell you what the amount needs to be.
It's your choice.
Some people give $10 a month. One lady supports us for $1,000 a month. Both are valuable. Like, we obviously, that 1,000 is going to achieve more, but even the fact that somebody's giving $10 a month means that we're spreading the risk. So if you had 100 people giving $10 a month, if one dropped off, it wouldn't make such a big difference. Yeah. And we might have picked up 2 or 3 more in the meantime. But if the $1,000 drops off, that's a hit. So, we want to spread the load. But more importantly, what it says is that we can do the maths on that. We know that this is coming in every month. So we could say at some point, we can open a new surveillance booth based on the funding model that we've got and the income that we receive on an ongoing basis. We love one-off donations, and people can go to the website and donate that way, but they can also sign up for that interception partnership. What happens then is that people start to own the mission with us, because now they're getting mail outs, they're receiving the regular updates. They're going, we rescued another 180 this month. They can celebrate with us because they're a partner with us. But and for as little as I said, probably less than $10, probably not worth it, but anything above $10 is awesome. And the average is probably around 50, so that's good. So when I go and speak in a church, sometimes the church says, we want to give to you from our missions budget, because we recognise what you're doing and how powerful it is. Others will come up and say, can I be an interception partner? So that's good. Then you've got clubs. There's so many community groups out there. I didn't know. So you got your Rotaries, your Lions. I've spoken in quite a few Rotary clubs, Lions clubs. I mentioned before U3A, which is retirees, Probus, which is the same sort of thing. National Seniors, there's Wider Vision clubs, there's Optimist, Red Hat Ladies, and they love hearing about hearing these stories. So if anybody's involved in a community group, church-based or non-church-based, doesn't matter. And then businesses. If you must do, a lot of people do professional development days. We get in a guest speaker to come and share about the work. Love doing those. Give me an hour and I'll tell the stories. I'll unpack all this through videos and photos and the personal stories, some of which you've heard today. And they're really good. And then often leads to organisations doing workplace giving for us, that they salary sacrificing to help support us. Others, we've got a couple of new businesses come on board with us in the last 12 months in Perth that give proceeds of their sales of a product that they're selling, online-based stuff. So they'll give us a percentage of their profit.
Okay, cool.
So they're the most obvious ways. So if anyone wants to get in touch, you can go through the website, which is everydaughtermatters.org.au, and you can actually put in a request there and it'll find its way to me if you're in Perth or in WA. Happy to travel as well. I do, Albany, Geraldton, Kalgoorlie, whatever. I'm happy to go anywhere.
Thank you so much for this
pleasure.
Really, really heart-touching stories. And thank you for helping Nepal and other Asian countries who really needs a person like you. More of you. And after this episode, if you feel to donate anything or if you want to help us in any way, help the Every Daughter Matters in every way, small help is appreciated. Please do not hesitate to contact Darren or contact me or drop a message, a YouTube channel. Anything would be helpful. We would look forward for your help. And thank you so much for listening to us. And thank you for being here. Thank you. Namaste.